A large part of our population is morally or physically unclean. It is too late to warn against mistakes, such as we all make and must uphold. So all that remains is to assist those who have fallen to get back on their feet and learn from their sorrows to avoid the pitfalls next time. No law can be passed that will make people good. But suffering makes people careful when advice is ignored. Sorrow and disappointment make us think when warnings are permitted to pass unheeded. In this way, man learns through his experiences when he refuses to listen to anything else. The annals of life show that our greatest sinners have made our greatest saints, not because they made mistakes, but because they learned through experience to correct them. We should all thank God that we have the power to suffer, for through pain, great souls are born. Adversity overwhelms the sluggard, but galvanizes the soul into action and gives incentive to those who seek to achieve. Adversity disciplines the spirit and tests the resolve. With the mastery of adversity, courage is born. There is a spiritual teaching which I have mentioned, which I strongly disagree with, that idea that everything happens for a reason. The everything that happens for a reason carries an energy to it in a lot of instances, not all, in a lot of instances whereby, God is presenting adversity to me and there's some sort of reason that God has in God's plan and God's will for me that I must endure and I must, respect. But that it has nothing to do with me and the choices that I have made. And I consider that somewhat of a dangerous spiritual philosophy because it divorces the individual from the responsibility of going, have I contributed to this adversity which I'm experiencing? What Manly Hall is saying is that, our population is not clean in intention, is not clean in decisions, in actions. And when I say not clean, I mean is employing deceit or is lacking in consciousness and then blaming other people for the adversity which they draw to them. There is some adversity which you cannot avoid. And I was thinking, and I'm glad that you spoke about your situation, your vacation with your in-laws, because in-laws are something that you really don't have that much choice over. I mean, you find somebody, you fall in love, or you decide this person, I want them to be my husband or my wife, and of course you'll get a glimpse into their family to a certain degree. But if you're in love with that person and you decide to marry them, in a sense you enter into their family as he enters into your family or she enters into your family, and you're going to have to deal with situations there that are going to create adversity for you. I mean, there's a lot of jokes about how in-laws are very difficult. It's just that people are difficult, and when you are faced with situations with people that you maybe didn't necessarily choose directly to be in close proximity to, you're going to have to deal with that adversity. There's some responsibility because if you did not explore your in-laws before you got married, then you can't really raise your hand and go, look what was done to me. You have the option to go, I'm not only marrying this person, but I'm marrying into this family as well. So I need to take responsibility that at times that, like if they do traditions in a certain way and your spouse goes, at least every other year I want to do it this way, and then the other ones will trade off. And sometimes they may not even be that flexible. They might be like, this is just how I do Christmas or Thanksgiving or 4th of July or what have you. Now what he's saying is that your attitude in how you face adversity will make a huge impact on the kind of life that you lead. I have determined that there are a couple of very strong guidances to help you reduce adversity. The first is through avoiding situations that are likely to result in adversity. Well, here's an example of that I found was quite mind-blowing, even though it's relatively simple. And I don't remember when, but I know when I lived in California, I discovered that you could make an appointment at the DMV. Now, before I knew of that, you know, there was this sort of dread. You'd go in there and you'd take a number, and it could be 30 minutes, 45, an hour. You'd look up at the board, and there was like A, B, C, D, 106, 94, 17. And the numbers are just being called out randomly, and you're like, I'm at 86A, and they're at 52A. It's like, this can't be right. But it was right, and you waited as they, you know, went through the whole thing. And for somebody like me, I'm an Aries. I don't like to waste time. I certainly was a lot more impatient when I was younger. To sit around for an hour, and you know, we didn't have phones to swipe, so if you didn't bring a book or something, and plus, you know, it's not the most comfortable chairs, and you hear people disgruntled, and there's kids running around, and it's just, you know, it's not a good place to burn off energy. But then all of a sudden I became aware that you can either phone in, I don't remember how, because I don't know if the internet was the thing back then, but you could set up an appointment. And when I tried that, really, you walk in, within 5 minutes they called me, and I was out of there, you know, within 7 to 10 more minutes. That was a very simple teaching on how to avoid adversity. I did not have to spend an hour. I didn't have to dread going to the DMV. Now, likely, these days you can get a lot of stuff done online. But I think if you focus on the type of situations that draw adversity to you, you will recognize that through consciousness you can avoid many of them. Like, for example, if you don't like shopping at Harris Teeter or Publix when it's really crowded, then you can go late at night. And it's very relaxing in a way. It's much more relaxing. That's a simple thing. Well, I don't like to go, I don't like to drive at night. Okay, well, if I can't make the adjustments, then I have to be prepared to accept the adversity of the daytime traffic and whatever. And that's a relatively benign example. But you can be very conscious in terms of how you live your life to reduce adversity. What I see in a lot of cases is the opposite, is that people go headfirst into situations with a kind of a stubbornness about trying to either demonstrate how much adversity will come their way. Just look at how I'm targeted by life. Look how I am the perpetual victim. I'm doing everything right. And yet they're not doing everything right. But they refuse to make the change because they want to live a certain way, and then that way of life tends to bring adversity, because maybe they don't see the degree to which they are, you know, elbowing people as they try to get what they want. They get to the counter, they haven't brought the proper forms, they go into some sort of a tirade of how this is ridiculous and unfair, and really it was they didn't bring the right forms. So I want to encourage you to study the degree to which certain adversities come your way, and to what degree you can avoid them through preparation. That's number one. The second is the energy that you cultivate within yourself. Because we know, and seek ye first the kingdom of God, what you put out will dictate what comes back to you. Now that is a lifelong study, maybe multiple lifetimes if you believe in reincarnation, to really understand what does it mean to sow energies that then reap exactly what you want. I mean, I have personally been studying and applying it for 30 years. And I'm still fascinated with the whole notion of to what degree a human being has the creative power in their life. Because clearly you can't create a perfect life for yourself because other people are going to be part of it. And I don't think a perfect life is complete isolation from other people. So you have to learn how to integrate into a system where everybody's intention is sort of competing. And is it possible that there can be a harmonious end for all people? Well, clearly on this planet we're a long way off of that. And that can be heartbreaking. I may have shared with you, I'm moving on to the next biography. I'm reading Abraham Lincoln's biography now. Now I grew up in Canada, so we don't have American history. It was not taught to me growing up. And I only arrived in the US about the age of 27. So I was long out of the education system. So it's quite fascinating to me to learn about American history and the time when Abraham Lincoln began his political career. You know, in what they would call the frontier days, where it was very rough and, but not completely uncivilized. And slavery was this huge conflict in the United States. I mean, people who were against slavery were often killed, like by mobs. It's a little hard to fathom, you know, that you could walk down the street and see somebody being mistreated who was enslaved and were being sold on an auction block and like with any kind of consciousness of love and truth. And of course, Christianity was rampant in America. But that did not seem to translate to go, we cannot call people property. We cannot do it. But that was, it's just so that you understand. And I was telling Jody the other day that I was doing some research on slavery. And this country, Mauritania, which is in just south of Morocco in Africa, on the west coast, slavery was completely legal until 2007. You just have to kind of like shake that off for a second and go, people are born in, considered animals, and raped and beaten and not given proper food and not given place to food, and that's just accepted. That's just, some people, that's just their lot, and they're barely even people. And of course, when they outlaw slavery after it's been in effect for thousands of years, it's not like the next day everybody's hugging and going, oh, sorry about that, let's come on over to our cocktail party. It's like there's a long history that those people are shunned until the consciousness is washed out. And we see in America, 150 years later, we're still a long ways from having that washed out. There is tremendous anger, frustration, resentment, guilt, bitterness as a result of that history. But it will help you understand that the consciousness that we are striving for, somebody who says, I want to live a Christ-centered life, I want to understand the kingdom of God, as the song says, which is the kingdom of love, which is love for all people. And love for all people is very difficult because we are going to make mistakes that cause other people angst. So Jesus said, you got to forgive. You have to learn how to forgive promptly. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. You're going to carry bitterness in your heart, you're going to be in prison. And you're going to make mistakes. And you pray that other people will forgive you. And if they don't, it can be very painful, but you can't force it. So that's another kind of biblical teaching, that you must let people seek the kingdom of God to whatever degree they wish to. And if they don't wish to, you still have to love them. You don't have to hang out with them. You don't have to proselytize and convert them. That's not your mission. But you will be facing some adversity if you sit around and you hear people's ideas. And you were talking about being disgusted at certain things. Yes. It's normal when things go against love and you're ultimately committed to love, that when somebody is speaking something of hate or fear, of just disdain, that it does feel disgusting. That is not a problem. Now, what we choose to do with it, that can be a problem. But it's another thing with anger too. If you get angry because you see or experience something that goes against truth and goes against love, that is the correct response. Your anger is an indication that love is being violated. Some people teach, like, well, getting angry is a sin. I highly disagree with that. How you act out your anger might result in you being no better than the person that you are angry at. But it's tempting, right? It's tempting to want to express that anger because there's some relief. It's like the steam is somewhat let off a little bit when I get a chance to voice my anger. So there's discipline that we need to do because there's also ramifications for that. We don't need to create additional adversity in other people's lives. As you clean up your consciousness and you're able to perceive things more in accord with love and light, the amount of uncleanliness that he's speaking of is tremendous. It's overwhelming. And there can be a temptation to want to go, I need to retreat. I got to be protected against it. And that is an option. But that's not going to make you happy. Because we do need to be interacting. And if you're going to grow, you have to be in relationship. Because you have to see the places in you that are good, the places that need work. And we're trying to move the needle of humanity. I really believe that, to whatever degree we can. So we have to go out there and demonstrate where our consciousness is at. And sometimes your consciousness of love is going to bring extra adversity. This is a strange thing. But if you look to the life of Jesus, you go, here's somebody who really just taught the truth and sought to demonstrate it. And when the Pharisees were saying weird things or being hypocritical, then he spoke against it. And when they were using the temple as a, what do they call it, the money changers, he goes into the temple and he sees that they've made it into a den of robbery. They're charging people too much for the pigeons and for the sacrificial lambs, and they're basically cheating people because they're not bright enough to count the coins. And he overturns the table and he makes a whip and he starts whipping people. He's demonstrating that this is not in accord with love. And so they hated him for that. You know, if you're running a business and you're doing pretty well, but of course you're cheating people, but you're like, well, I'm not really cheating people because, you know, they're too stupid to know. And then somebody comes along and goes like, you're totally cheating people, and your living is about to be taken from you. You're probably going to be angry. You're not going to go like, oh, Lord, finally somebody's shining light on me. I should really, you know, take a look at this. That would be the response that we would have as conscious souls, going like, man, I kind of sensed this was off, and thank God somebody finally put an end to it. But that's not what happens when people experience the light of truth upon them. They get angry and defensive, and they start to find fault with you and blame you. And in the case of Jesus, they conspired and figured out a way to put him to death. So there may await us, if you become a beacon of truth, you may draw that kind of energy to you. People who would like to, you know, put a death to your reputation, who would like to cause tremendous adversity to you because in their perspective, your energy, your sight, your words, your attitude have brought light to things that are not reputable in them. And I don't know any way to avoid that. I have not found, I guess, unless you withdraw from society and you want to have nothing to do with it. That's going to go against your nature as a human being who wants community, who wants connection. So I don't recommend that. So in conclusion, expect adversity. It's going to be part of day-to-day life. Reduce adversity through making good decisions. Do not pridefully force your way through. Do not stubbornly go, I'm going to do it this way because it's the right way. Go, how might I avoid adversity through consciousness? And most importantly, cultivate an attitude that goes, to what degree am I sowing seeds of adversity? Through being dishonest in financial matters, through being dishonest in my relationship issues, through being abusive to my family, through being neglectful to my employer, etc., etc. To what degree, those things are going to come back to you at some point. They may not come back to you in your employment situation. You may be taking advantage of your employment situation and find that later on you're taken advantage of in a relationship situation. And that's, you know, something that you have to study. Go, I don't want to put out that kind of energy in any aspect of my life because it's going to come back in some aspect. And that challenge, you will find within a few years of making that the focus, a huge degree of adversity is gone, really, because you have cleaned up your mind and your heart and your word and your intention. And then there's the simple dealing with the adversity of the population at large. And since we spend that same 2-3 years cultivating an attitude of love, we go, it's hard at times, but forgive them, Father, they know not what they do.